war is a big business. Technology, if it could produce a sustainable model of winning wars, America would have won in Vietnam, it would have won in Afghanistan, it would have won in Iraq. Petraeus was pursuing his interest and was trying to become friends with me, but he was no friend of India, and he's never going to.
He wanted India to go easy on Pakistan, so Pakistan can help in Afghanistan.
So he asked me. So they asked me a lot of questions. I had gone with my wife, and again, some people ask you questions, you're just taken aback. So on what basis were you selected to be the defense attaché of India in spite of not having a leg? Now, how do you answer that? Yeah, you obviously are selected on competence, but I didn't. Saying that looks so full of yourself. Mm-hmm. It looks. It doesn't look good.
Yeah.
So I was just quickly thinking, so I said on my good looks. And that brought the house to
General David Petraeus.
I was addressing the handicapped soldiers in Walter Reed. So they were about 500, 600. Okay. The Walter Reed used to have a lot of people. As compared to me, the people who are handicapped, there are some handicaps are even no hands, legs, eyes, paraplegic. Very tough. Sometimes go and visit in Pune Artificial Limb Center, or visit Queen Mary's thing in Khadki, where paraplegic of Indian Army live. So sometimes go there, you will get better motivation there. They will be more motivating. You will be surprised. They will not be depressed.
Oh my God. I definitely want to get into this, but first I want to introduce everyone. Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of Chat Masala. Super thrilled to have with us Major General Bhupesh Jain. We've already been speaking about so many issues, and we can't wait to share them with you. Major General Jain, after NDA, rose up the ranks, was part of Special Forces units in J&K and Sri Lanka, but he also has experience on the geopolitical front. He was the Indian attaché to the US and Canada, so he's going to speak a little bit about geopolitics as well, and a lot of leadership and life lessons. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. So we would love to start with how it all began. You were telling us about where you grew up outside Amritsar, and how did you stumble upon the NDA exam in the first place?
I was born and brought up in a small village, Patti, which is, if you go from Amritsar to Khemkaran, it's in the midway. My parents had migrated out of Kasur, which is, if you go from Khemkaran towards Kasur is about 30 kilometers more, just about that. And father had joined Air Force, so I'm son of a soldier. 65 war showed us a lot of soldiers in that area, because it was a battlefield in 65. That's second. Third, I was sitting in class 11 when one of my neighbors was filling the form for NDA, and he was trying to get it signed from the principal. So I asked him, Ravinder Suri, I still remember his name was. I also showed interest. Lot of us showed interest. I went and got that form from UPSC Bhavan in Shahjahan Road. Filled that form. Here I am. That's it.
Amazing. What was the app? Since we talk about applications, what was the application process like to get into NDA back then? Has it changed in the past 50 years?
No, not much. It's you have to sit for I think exams. There are two exams. One is there is English exam, and there is Knowledge 1 and Knowledge 2. One is current affair, and the second thing is about science, bit of science. So you sit for those exams. I had appeared for 11th. To be honest, I hadn't prepared much. Kind of took it in my steps, and my father also thought it would be a good experience for me to go. And I cleared the written exams, and I received an interview call for the SSB, Services Selection Board. That's a tough one. Nowadays, people go with a lot of preparation. We just went like that. We didn't even know what it was. So just went along with it. They have 2.5 days of tests. They put you through psychologists. Then you have group tests, and then they make you go through an interview. You get a batch of 16 or 18 or 30, something that So in my batch, I think 3 of us cleared. Then there is a process of formulation of merit list. Those days I was doing physics honors in Colonial College after my 11th here in Delhi University. So the call came and the letter came to join the NDA, and I ran. Who wanted to study? But didn't realize my whole life will be spent studying. The biggest very foolishness in my head. NDA mean you got to keep studying. To keep you educating yourself. Technology changes, geostrategy changes, geopolitics change, evolution of weapons take place. You just to stay current, you have to study. So the studies never left me.
Can we go deeper into that? Because one thing we wanted to explore are misconceptions about the military that non-service members may have. So I've never heard this, that a career in the military is a lifetime of studying.
Oh, yes.
How have you continually exposed yourself to what's happening in the field and in the world?
Look, at the younger level, you have to keep yourself aware of your men. So keeping and understanding men was very important part of your facets. For example, I still know each Jawan whom I served, particularly in younger days, from where he belonged, what was his father used to do, what his children were doing, what is his wife's name, what his wife do. To be a leader, you have to understand men, particularly at tactical level. You need to know the characteristic weaknesses, strengths of the person. You won't get to know unless you don't know him. And that's something which is grinded into you in the armed forces.
Wow.
So that's one part of this. Second thing is, weapon systems and technology keeps evolving. So you've got to keep yourself current, understanding what it is. Application of what exists to convert it into an art of something different in special forces is an art in itself. So there are a huge number of fields. Communication is one, radio technology. See how it has evolved from HF and VHF sets to what you have. You youngsters know better than me. Internet and mobile phones. Weapon systems. Very plain weapon systems of what you have now. Guns. Applications, technology. In fact, if you go to some of the air defense weapon system NCOs, their systems look like they are sitting inside a cockpit of an aircraft, of older era aircrafts. In fact, the modern aircrafts have very few switches. They all touch buttons, and you can actually fly them using an iPad, like F-35. But it's got 8.7 million lines of software. So imagine a kid who's going to fly that F-35. He's got to understand what 8.7 million lines of written software does. Recently, there is a case of F-35 pilot whose plane was not able to judge S-300 tracking him, while he could do it, but his software couldn't. If that pilot doesn't understand, then he would have risked his plane, and it's $500 million worth of plane. So you imagine today. So education is never going to end. You got to keep studying, and I can go on this subject forever.
Amazing. One is the EQ. I really like what you said about knowing your men, knowing the people you work with at such a detailed level, and their aspirations, what makes them tick. At the same time, you need to also develop your IQ, your knowledge of the field continuously. And especially in the case of the military, the stakes are so high. Like, it's not about getting a 90% or an 80% on a test. I mean, the consequences of not knowing those 8.5 million lines of code could be huge. How do you deal with this kind of pressure, Major General? People talk about stress and pressure, and a lot of people are struggling with mental health. What insight can you share on when you were in combat as a Special Forces commander? how did you keep your mind sharp and make decisions when so many things were going on?
It's a very famous book, Psychology of Military Incompetence by Jean Dixon, I think. I forget the author's name. And finally, at the end of the day, armed forces have two very strong facets. And both contain family.
Family, okay.
There are two types of families. One is your own family, personal family. Father, mother, sister, brother. You just don't consider yourself family like the Western world. Family, particularly in India, is much wider than that. In Indian context, the village is family. So, one part is that support from family. Having been through a life-changing injury in life, I wouldn't have been here but for my wife's support. And then there's another family. The military units themselves are very strong internal bonds. They support each other very well. So that family is also important. Unit, battalion, regiment. There are many names for it. It's a very strong bonds. I'm still in touch with children and grandchildren of people. The first boss I served with in 1979, I am still closely in touch. He still treats me like the same 20 years older that I was. So that's this continues throughout their life, and some even to the next generations.
Wow.
So these are two very strong support systems which help not only those of us who are living, but even for the deceased who's no more there, their families, when they need their work, they still reach out to us, and we come to know, and we help them wherever we can. And this support system of veterans, they being invited regularly for interactions every year. It may look frivolous sometimes to you all. Here, once you move out of a organization, you barely look back at it. It's not so enough. You keep going back. You keep going back till you live, and then your second generations will also stay in touch with them.
Unbelievable. Yeah. In this day and age, I think that's something we can all learn from, that level of loyalty. Talk a little bit about the leadership lessons and the principles that have guided you in various settings in the military, and how those evolved over the decades as you assumed greater and greater responsibility.
Leadership is abiding. It doesn't change. Being father ever changed? Has being mother ever changed? I wrote down for effective leadership, and I grouped it in three heads: task, individual, and group. So now in task, I thought of four things. First thing is you define what you want to do. So the task for you was to interview a person. Then you make a plan. Then you have allotted work, who each has been given the task to accomplish that. And now, having seen each one of them accomplishing their task, you have to control two things: quality and tempo. So as for that, at the lowest level, from an interview, to the highest level at the Prime Minister, where he has to run the country or has to allot a task, that dynamics of task needs never change.
This is so interesting. I mean, it's so similar in other organizations. You think that the military would be different from the corporate world, but that seems to be how everything is run. Objectives, key results. We talk about owners. So you're saying the principles of leadership, whether it's in J&K, Sri Lanka, or a boardroom or a startup, apply across the board.
Then the second thing that you keep hearing is a word called strategy. Now, strategy can be defined in three words: ways, ends, and means. If you want to make a strategy, what is the end state that you want to achieve? You said that is the end. And what means do you have? You're never going to have ever all the means to attain that's required. No one. Not a military leader, not a corporate leader, you'll never have the money to make a house or buy a car or an office, etc., etc. You therefore have to judiciously allot those means towards that end. And in order to do that, you have to come up with ways.
Okay, so means are more resources and ways are how you're using those resources to achieve the ends.
Yes.
Okay.
And when you make, then you realize with the current means, I only can reach this end. Only go up to say Mathura or Vrindavan. So, this is a dynamic process. No, but you want to go, so forget. Let me take that money, not go in my car, go buy a train ticket. You change the ways. This, essentially the process is strategy.
I love this. And what I'm hearing is there are these big words we use, but you're breaking them down so simply and so clearly, so it's actionable. And is that something that the military practices a lot? I guess you have
learn.
to.
You learn. You virtually army is like a guru shishya parampara, because if you have to be a leader, you have to be a guru. You have to be able to make somebody a guru, assimilate from him, and thereafter pass it on to your next generation. Then let me come down to individual needs, and there are three. In order for these guys to accomplish the task that you assign them, they need training. Then you have to know them. The first thing that I said, you got to know them. There'll be guys who will come in the morning early. There'll be guys who will work late. There'll be guys. I know where you looked. So you as a leader cannot say, I come at 9 o'clock, everybody will be here. You are done with that team. That team is done with you. And then finally, the third thing is recognition. And that brings me to group needs. And there are 5 of them. You got to set an example, follow discipline. 9 o'clock means 9 o'clock. If it is 9:30, then you wasted 5 people 30 minutes. That means 2.5 hours to the company. You need to ensure team spirit. Very important. So you do lots of things to ensure team spirit, Maintain motivation. So you do a lot of things in order to generate team spirit and maintain motivation. But for doing all this, you need communication. These youngsters keep asking me question. Yesterday somebody asked me this question. And it was pretty much related to it. How do I ensure that there is no conflict? So in all this, what happens is somewhere or the other conflict emerges. Any group of people who will come, as they say in Punjabi, agar bartan rahenge to khadkenge. So that means this conflict is bound to emerge. Conflict is not undesirable. Friction is necessary. Remember the Newton's law of inertia. Friction is essential. So conflict will occur. Leader has to ensure he controls the conflict.
How do you do that when different people in a team have strong ideas about how to take things forward, and there is that conflict? How does a leader manage that conflict?
Allow that conflict to emerge. Where is the problem? Allow disagreements. Allow that arguments to take place. You have to keep encouraging disagreement. It's healthy. When 4 guys will apply their mind, they'll come up with different idea, and there'll be a vigorous, sometimes more than vigorous arguments. At the end of it, you have to be able to harness this entire process through your communication skills. And 2 things help you. One is patience, and second is be a good listener. And there is no absolute position in any such situations. None of us are right. Who's right? Is Gita right? Question itself is sacrilegious to some of us. What does Gita say? If you have to sum it up in 3 words, you can say, your present and future is karma. Okay? And at the end of it, there comes a result of that karma. That's your past, and that was your destiny. So, if you allow even the most absolute of those things to be allowed to be had a conversation with, I think conflict can be resolved. It's not a big problem. Sometimes it will be a temporary phase of conflict where a guy needs to go back and reflect on himself. That's not a problem. So these are my thoughts on some of the thoughts which I thought of on leadership.
This is so interesting because I think it goes back to misconceptions about the military. When you see military movies, you have the sergeant shouting at somebody and says, "Don't talk back at me." It seems like there's only one channel of communication, but I think in reality, there is a lot of this disagreement, and leadership is about making that disagreement healthy and channeling that toward an objective.
Remember, in the ancient era, the armed forces was about drills. And in battle, particularly in stress against enemy fire, shelling, people dying, you need people to have an absolute obedience. Otherwise, you risk the entire group. So initially what you see is, training of a young, raw civilian into a soldier is a process where he is being broken in and being taught. So that, when the body attacks and when the body defends or when the body holds are decisions which a leader takes. And the soldiers need to obey that. But that's at the very basic level. But as you rise higher, planning process is very elaborate. It takes hours, days, weeks, months, sometimes years. It's got to happen through a process of deliberations and discussions.
So you talked about family. I thought that was very interesting. In this generation, a lot of young people are about not compromising, right? If I want X, I should go for it. And it seems that in the military, you have to sacrifice a lot. If you're on the front lines, you're sacrificing a lot of time with family, maybe missing birthdays and anniversaries. How do you reconcile those two? How do you balance your professional duties with family and other obligations?
This part about sacrifice or nowadays people just being little absolute. I continue to work with young people. I don't find that. I feel absolute. I'm very upbeat on the younger generation. A fantastic set of guys. They all, you think idiots didn't exist earlier? This is the human disease, the idiocy is only the privilege of the current generation. No, we had plenty of them. So I think this problem, again, some people just weren't willing to compromise. There were plenty of us who were compromised. And people understand. And it's about leadership. I just don't find any problem in the current set of, So I think it's a process of a dialogue of communication. It used to exist earlier also. I was in Sri Lanka. My wife was asked by my commanding officer's wife as to what do you want? She says, I want a husband for the delivery. All of a sudden, one day evening, my boss tells me, you go on leave tomorrow. I said, no. He gave me one dirty look. Pack your bag and get up. Go on a 1 month leave. People have to avail leave. Next day morning, I reached the airport at Palali. He hike to Trincomalee. He ride to Madras. Chennai, Minambakam airport, I hitched a ride to Agra. Agra, I caught Taj Express. By evening, I was at Delhi. Hitchhiking, not a nap as I spent other than the punishment that Taj TT gave because I didn't have time. So we boarded the train. So we have to pay that penalty of whatever, 2 rupees or whatever those was. I reached home. And later on, I came to know, so those guys, the good leader does not wait for the team members to tell you what he wants. You anticipate. It's then that the credit and the generosity is of greater value. And that for you to understand, you have to know that person, what matters to him. You can get this generation to do anything. They're very good people to work with. I'm very upbeat about them. Only thing is, my generation and generation immediately after me, will they be able to upskill themselves in leadership adequately? If they don't, then they'll mess up this generation. We have to provide them with opportunities. We do have to provide them with space. We have to provide them motivation. We have to provide them with guidance. And for that, we have to have communication. If you're going to sit back on a side and sit all wretched lot, you'll suffer. I have been to schools. I am repeatedly told by the frustrated teachers, "Padhte nahi hai, khelte nahi hai." Rubbish. You're not good enough.
I love that. So it's like, we need to take ownership and really understand other people. I think this is a more general lesson. Amazing. Would love for you to share your transition, not so much transition, but it seemed that early in your career you were in special forces combat, and then later in your career you started interacting with countries around the world, the US, Canada, UK, Nepal. How was that transition? What did you learn from your counterparts around the world?
Petraeus was no friend of mine. Petraeus was essentially looking to somehow, while looking after Central Command, his main aim was that India stops pushing Pakistan so that Pakistan removes all the combat resources on the Indian side of the border and bring them towards Afghanistan so that he could pursue this thing. So Petraeus was pursuing his interest and was trying to become friends with me. But he was no friend of India, and he's never going. He
wanted India to go easy on Pakistan, so Pakistan can help in Afghanistan.
Which to my argument was, you are idiot to believe that Pakistan will ever help you in Afghanistan, and history has proven that. So, but anyway, that's a separate issue altogether. This is a process of essentially a defense attaché or mill-to-mill cooperation or international relations. Essentially is another facet of diplomacy.
What does this mean, mill-to-mill?
Military to military.
Okay, got it.
Indo-US relations, what they are today, But where did they start from? Improvement?
Oh no, I would love to know.
There was a gentleman called Kickleiter. He was a Pacific Command boss. India used to fall in his territory. The US president tasked Kickleiter to start a relationship with India because they started anticipating this, that they need India on their side. And Kickleiters came up with their proposals. And that's where, what was basically seeking was mill-to-mill relationship between USA and India. That is the basis, foundation on which slowly India exploited. And today, if you see, there would be at least 75 or 80 cooperation agreements going on between India and maybe probably 100. I won't be able to keep count. I've stopped counting now because it's no more possible to keep track. Probably MEO people only would know. Mm-hmm. You name a field and you will find India and US are cooperating on that field. The political leadership obviously controls these activities. So all these activities got controls. For good cooperation, US has 4 foundational agreements. And in spite of all the pressure of America, the last cooperation agreement, which is called BECA, has got signed very recently in I think Manohar Parikar's time, under the current Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji. So mill-to-mill diplomacy is a part of a nation's activities. Now from there, bring your mind back to the latest SCO. China understands and proposed in the last talk between Rajnath Singh ji and the current Chinese defense minister to start that mill-to-mill cooperation, which was turned down by Shri Rajnath Singh ji. So these are signals to the other country, to your own countrymen and to the rest of the world where you stand in a relationship with their country. While there are many other parts of a relationship, military to military diplomacy, and as a defense attaché, that was my part to play. I played that part, but very exclusively under the control of the New Delhi. You just do what you are told to do and as much as you are supposed to do. And we had a very, 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 very interesting, very fruitful, very good cooperation with the United States. We do about 13 odd exercises annually or biannually with them. So
every month there's a military exercise between India and the US?
Something is happening. Some activity is happening. There is a lot of activity going on. Americans initially, when they went into the CI counterinsurgency operations, they did a lot of work with India, and they picked up a lot of good ideas from us. They have immense resources and they have technology. You got to grant them. $800 plus billion worth of defense budget. So they are a rich country, and they have they spend their resources, and they essentially have used their armed forces to drive their national interest, and they continue to do that even now.
So I'm just curious, if you don't mind sharing, when General Dave Petraeus, who for those of you watching was the supreme commander of all American forces in Afghanistan and Iraq, so when he told you, can you lay off Pakistan? So
he didn't tell me. He basically was wanting to become friends with me, and he used me to kind of get ambassador over for an interaction at Tampa Bay into his headquarters. So me and ambassador flew, and we went into the meeting, and then the fireworks flew. So that's that part, I think, is best kept out of
got it.
in an open debate conversation.
We do a lot of teaching, mentoring, coaching here at Athena, and you have trained entire divisions in the military, been responsible for modernizing Nepal's armed forces as well. We read about that. How do you structure a first-rate training program, and how do you ensure that your high standards are met consistently? Because the consequences, again, of not meeting those standards can be disastrous on the battlefield. So any insight for teachers, for mentors, for coaches around the world today?
You see, first of all, is excellence. An organization needs to imbibe a culture of excellence. Similarly, an individual needs to frame for himself a culture of excellence. This is coming from one of my ex-bosses, Colonel K.D. Pathak. He's very much alive, 85 years old. His education was a good leader and a good unit does everything well. You can't have a guy dressed slovenly with the unshaven hair all over the place, wear casual dress. I still remember in OPSUB during an interview, a guy came for an interview to me. One look at him, I told him, send him away. I sent him away. And he was dressed up. I just one look at him and sent him away. And the HR staff kept pestering me. 1 month later, forced me to sit to have interview him again. I told that staff, sit next to me. I interviewed him. At the end of it, I asked, and she said no. I said, why did you waste my time? So you when you go and meet a person, by now you would have started realizing, trainable or waste of time? Yes or no?
Yeah.
So that culture of excellence needs to come in. But to the individuals, I need to tell you, is, people dream. It's good to have a dream. But I believe, keep dreaming. But it will not take you anywhere. What will take you anywhere is dedication. So you have to actually put into your team a sense of dedication, hard work, commitment. These guys must be there just at it. Keep doing it till you get it to the level that you want it to come. You've brought them to 70 or 75% or 80%. Then putting in energy to take it to 90%, or is it the effort worth it? That's leader's decision. Mm-hmm. So the first thing is, as Nike says, just do it. Mm-hmm. The second thing, and this is for current generation also, don't seek happiness.
Ooh. We have something called the Happiness Project.
Focus on making others happy. And you most certainly will get happiness as side effects. You keep focusing on getting happiness, you will not get it. Stop trying.
Because happiness and wellness are things that we're all focusing on these days. But you're saying the key to that is how do we share that with others?
Put this inside your organization. Unhappy team will never excel. So your ability to run a happy team is important. I take great pride in doing that. I'm very, very, very proud of this fact. This is something which I like to gloat over. The only thing I gloat over. I will go to any lengths, sometimes even picking, getting bashed up at home for team's happiness. So if you cannot ensure happy team, your team will not excel. You will not be able to create a great team.
How do you maintain that happiness in stressful situations like combat? Any tips and tricks, tactics you can share with all of us?
Crack a joke. I am customer success. I work with an American who is absolute sullen fellow. Okay, he makes people cry. The girl used to cry. So one day I cracked a joke with her and I warned him. Next time this girl cries, you're no more going to be my customer. So, you protect your team. They should know they are absolutely safe. If the girl is scared of walking to your office alone, how can you be happy? How can she be happy? She feels protected. They won't beat drums to tell you they're happy, but they let you know. The third thing I want to say, it's all about luck.
Ooh, all about luck.
All about luck. Count your blessings. How lucky we are. 2 हाथ हैं, 2 पैर हैं. मेरे तो वो भी नहीं है. एक missing है. Human beings, tummy is full, dressed up well, sitting in a beautiful air-conditioned office. Therefore, develop empathy. You got so much. There's so many who are without that. Be a believer. If you are a believer, then only you will be lucky. Whatever form you call that. You can't keep cursing everything, be negative and consider yourself lucky. Because luck will pass you by. Be a team player. That's the 4th point. So you have to imbibe this issue of blessings of luck into your team. And you have to make your team player. Anybody, howsoever funny guy is, if he works for personal gain, picking him up and put him to the side, and if possible, give a kick on her backside or his backside. Out. Just do not ever have a person in your team who is not a team player. Sideline that person. You have to have team players, otherwise you will never be able to create a good team. Last thing, and this has got more to do with the current situation. Be kind to yourself. Stop forming opinions. Absolutely, we all have so much of opinions. Who's right? Nobody knows. But we believe we are the only ones right. And that is bringing us into clash. Whether it is social issues, whether it's financial issues, whether they are religious issues. We are angry while, we have an opinion about how everybody else needs to do his job. I can sit here and, but particularly when I was in my 20s, I knew how to run this country. I could advise Prime Minister to you name it. A guy making tea, to my boss. That's fine. That's the age of stupidity. I was entitled to it. But as you grow older, stop forming opinion. Just listen to people. Maybe you have your opinion. Listen to others. If the guy is stupid, just ignore him. Carry on. Stop forming opinion. And inside your organization, if you try and tell them, you got to have one single focus. Excellence. Tell me, how can you do that? Get those opinions into positive domain. How we do better. These are the 5 things that I could think of, which are the 5 key ingredients which you can pass it on into a organization. It then can excel. Whether it's a nation, whether it's an army, whether it's a company, these are the 5.
Whether it's a family, and you were saying that you learned as many leadership skills being a parent. Can you talk a little bit about that? What have your kids taught you about being a better leader?
I think first thing they have taught me is how lucky I am. I have two very good boys. They take care of us and they're good company. I can sit and watch sports with them. And last time I went and watched Steph Curry's game in San Francisco, or I went traveling into Portland with them, sit and have a drink with them, the elder fellow. If you can just sit and be able to, as your sons grow up, if you can become your friend and you can have company, and that's one part. But when the process of growing up, initially they are small and then you discipline them and they think father is bad because you discipline them, mother is better. And this process continues till he goes and starts finding his own life. And my elder son ended up joining the army because he loved being in the army. So we were in USA. I wanted him to study there. He left that. I had to buy him a ticket. He came here, didn't want to study there, wanted to join the army because he'd done his graduation in he did his BCom from Shri Ram College of Commerce. And after that, he joined Indian Army. He had his MBA entrance and I had paid money. He left that because he cleared SSB. He said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to the army. He spent 10 years there. He spent few days in the army. Then he heard about me from others. Then one day, and that's the best day of my life, he tells me on the phone, Papa, you are generally right. I said, hang on. Let me switch on the speakerphone. This is the best dialogue. That, in a way, I feel I succeeded somewhere. So what I did, I think I did 25 wrong things, probably one right thing. I was successful. We all learn on the job as a parent. And we all, as long as our heart is in the right place, which is it's fabulous. It's very, very emotional.
Amazing. We have some fun rapid fire questions now. Whatever first comes to your mind, sir. 3 skills young people should focus on. I know you touched upon that, but if you have to boil it down to 3, what would you advise?
Very simple. First thing is health. And health requires 2 things. Move your body and eat right. Then comes family. Always and every time. First you yourself, health. If you have no health, you can't look after your family. And if you are not healthy, your family is not happy, you cannot work. Work comes third, always and every time. Never try as a leader to place work ahead of these 2. These are the 3 key things.
Great advice. What value do you hold dear? What's one value you hold dear?
Integrity. Just do the right thing.
Now for some fun questions. Have you played any video games? Any war video games, first person?
My son plays, younger fellow. He plays a lot of video games with his friends.
Have you played with them?
No.
Okay.
I watched a lot of videos of Tom and Jerry. Right from they were 6-7 months, and if you make me see it my wife will come and say, who's the youngest of the lot? I still love that. If nobody is watching, I can watch Tom and Jerry.
On YouTube.
I never.
Speaking of TV, what's your favorite war movie? Military movie?
Not much of a movie buff, but there was a very famous movie, or 2 of them. First was Dirty Dozen, a bunch of misfits who become fits. That's a very special forces kind of a movie.
Great movie.
Another one I really loved, it was not a war movie, it's a sports movie, Chuck the India. It is, if you actually can sit with a team and try and decipher leadership lessons out of that movie, it is a fantastic movie. They, I don't know, consciously or unconsciously, they showed the process of team building.
Did your battalion, your command have a chant? Some kind of motto, and could you share that with us?
See, the first unit I was there, their chant was, it was inherently Durga, Durga Mata Ki Jai. And the second one is Balidanam Veer Lakshanam. So these were 2 mottos. But that's, each unit has a different, this thing, Bajrang Bali Ki Jai, Jat Regiment se, Gorkha se, Ayo Gorkhali. South Indian units also have their own chants. It's cultural and regional. But the most important and most vigorous chant which still sends a shiver down my spine is Bharat Mata Ki Jai.
I know it's not a rapid fire, but I really want to ask this because I imagine that India is such a diverse place. and I'm sure in your units there are people from Kashmir and Kerala. How do you bring together people of different backgrounds and get them to unify as a team? Basically, how did you act on the principles from Chak De India?
Frankly speaking, it all happens very subconsciously. The unit that I commanded was a JACLI, Jammu and Kashmir Light Infantry. It comprises of troops from Jammu and Kashmir. 47-48% were Muslims. There were a few percentage of Sikhs and some Hindus or Dogras. And again, there are plenty of subcastes in all these groups. Even in Sikhs, there are Rajput Sikhs, and then there are so Muslims from Valley are very different than Muslims from high region of Gurez and Muslims from Punch. So, India is a great melting pot. Their ability to interact with each other is very, very well. Frankly speaking, you don't need to do very much other than, the famous Maslow's theory of hierarchy. Okay, you first have to meet his basic needs. And you keep growing up, and you need to meet his self-actualization needs up also. Meet his physical needs, meet his emotional needs, meet his spiritual needs. These are so I think region or religion or caste does not play a major role inside it. Just focus and be fair. Just be absolutely fair.
Focus on psychology, focus on what unifies us all.
Yeah, but you cannot remove it from the back of mind. When a guy comes to you, you keep letting that thing stay in your mind, Is there a connection? Is there a connection? So keep your side alive or alert to it, that there is no unfairness goes on. So not only you have to be fair, you have to ensure that fairness happens. There is no partiality, no regionalism. Just treat them equally. I think kids, they don't mind it. They're okay with it. You take them off, that's fine with them.
Got it. All right, our last question, we ask this of all guests. What's one change you would love to see in the world or in India 10 years from now, in 2035?
The one and only change is cleanliness. I was asked this question, what's one thing when I came from America to India, what will I miss? I said cleanliness. Somehow we need to become a clean country. And if I may add a second thing to it, we need to inculcate self-discipline. We need to clean up ourselves. These are two things I would like to see a change in India.
Sir, this has been such an enlightening conversation. You have simplified complexity and given us so much to act on, things we will apply starting today as well. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Thanks, Rahul.
Okay.
I have one more thing that I wanted to share with all of you. You may record or you may not record, and this was misconceptions about military.
Okay, way more.
So I wrote that down. And the first one thing I wrote was, only dead have seen the end of all wars. Notwithstanding what Modi said, 21st century is not the century or era of wars. Wars are not ending. I think it was a very wrong message he conveyed, and in my view, it is akin to what Jawaharlal Nehru used to say. There may be a continuity in the belief of the Prime Minister, but as a nation, when we say we don't want to see wars, our enemies rejoice. China in particular. What we have to be telling him is, bring him along. Second, wars always have a commercial overtone.
Ooh, okay.
It was never devoid of business opportunities provided by conflict situation. War is a big business. Ask Boeing, ask Lockheed Martin, ask Raytheon, ask Northrop Grumman. And the last point is, we always are taught that technology helps you win wars. Technology has never produced lasting model of winning wars.
Really?
Never.
Acha.
Technology, if it could produce a sustainable model of winning wars, America would have won in Vietnam, it would have won in Afghanistan, it would have won in Iraq.
Oh, great point, yeah.
all technology will do is help you do a lot of spending with very limited residual advantages. What helps you win war are people, soldiers, men, their motivation, their will to win. See Vietnam. What did America did not try in Afghanistan? Or Russia didn't try in Afghanistan? And what did Afghans have? Military is not a solution to any problem. You know, you will hear this crap inside India, you know, Fauj ko bula lo. We can be of temporary help. We're not a solution. Never. Solution has to be through institutions. And military is not meant for that. We are a war waging tool. It is the ultimate tool of the nation. It has to be trained and kept ready for that. And I hope it's able to always deliver when the chips are down.
I'm sure it will with people like you.
Thank you.
Major General Jain. Thank you again.
Thank you.